You guys hear me okay?
So this is the recording for the August 18th Google Developer Group, and we have our presenter today. Travis, please go ahead. Thanks.
Cool. All right, let's talk some databases. Just real quick rundown of what we're going to talk about. A little intro: who this guy is, what is SADA, where they come from. Talk about why CDC, which is kind of an interesting concept. If you know your acronyms, then that should make kind of sense there. And then dive into the two products I mentioned, BigQuery and CloudSQL. And then really the one that ties them together, or one of the ones that ties them together, Datastream. And then of course, in the spirit of Elon Musk, just one more thing. So my name is Travis Depew, cloud engineer. So we at SADA, we consider ourselves a cloud engineer because we engineer the clouds. At Google, they consider themselves customer engineers because they engineer customers, I guess. I don't know. But it's a very similar role. So kind of a pre-sales role, and get to talk to a lot of cool people about getting their stuff into the cloud or how to optimize stuff. If you like hats, I am on Instagram, Mr. Hats On. I try to post every Friday for Crazy Hat Friday. But sometimes I get lazy and it doesn't happen. But anyways, so real quick about SADA, we are Google's cloud reseller partner of the year, 3 years running. We were global the last 2 years, but then they divided up. So then we only got North America, for 2020. So whatever. But we do work with a whole, slice of different customers. So all the way from enterprise, small business. And then anything in between, and any kind of workloads, any kind of optimizations that needs to happen. Happy to talk to you guys about that. Anyways, who cares? Let's talk change data capture. I think the first question to really start with is why. It's not going to be appropriate for every customer, every database. So let's talk a little bit about why you might want to look at change data capture. Really, some things you want to think about is how stale is the source data. So you've got a database and it's got data. You're sticking data into that database, and then how long does it sit there, and what do you do with that afterward? And then you might have some reports. You might have some dashboards. And are they especially time sensitive? Does the reports get run often? And maybe that's impacting your performance of your database. And then I think the last piece here is really critical importance. ML AI is becoming such a huge, space that it's really critical to get the data you need. But training those models can really crush your database. So when your model training is interfering with your production database, you might have issues, and we can help you out with that. Okay. So the two real concepts to really understand in terms of change data capture are OLTP and OLTA. So online transaction processing and online analytical processing. So let's dive in a little bit, and I'm going to juxtapose them because I think that kind of helps understand where each has its strengths. I've got a couple of tables here, but I just want to highlight a couple of things. On the left, you've got your transaction processing, and then on the right side, you've got your analytics processing. So generally, your transactions are your daily transactions. So this is, somebody puts stuff into their cart. This is, somebody inserts a record into a database. These are all, inserts, updates, deletes, at the row level. And versus analytics is queries. It's all about, pulling data out, looking at it, visualizing it, training your models, that kind of thing. The three pieces here that I want to just highlight, like I said, the insert and update versus select, and then the response time. So milliseconds, you want your transaction super, super fast, right? You want your inserts, your updates to be very fast. But your analytics, maybe it's a little more offline. Maybe it's a little more batch. Maybe you're massaging some data, it's sticking out someplace else. And then, sources, transactions versus an aggregation of those transactions. So think about your daily transactions, but then also aggregate them over a particular 24-hour time period. Another, table, again, I'm not going to kill you with all this text, so don't worry. It's not going to be all this the whole time. Just a couple other things, but really I want to focus here on the updates. So like I said, transactions are going to be super fast, inserts and updates. And then analytics are going to be a little bit more long running, batch jobs. You might start to sense a pattern. Yep, backup and recovery, also very important there. Okay, so Google Cloud has a very large multitude of products, and each of them have their strengths. There's a reason that they exist. So this is kind of the storage. If you think about storing data, this is kind of the spectrum of products that Google has. You've got all the way in the left, very ephemeral, very instantaneous Memcache. And then kind of moving, you've got your CloudSQL. So those are your traditional SQL RDBMS databases. Cloud Spanner is also in there, but is on a different level in terms of scale. So that's your globally distributed relational database, ASC compliant, by the way. And then you've got your non-relational. So these are your NoSQL databases. Data Store used to be called, well, Firebase is in this grouping as well, but they're kind of moving more towards the Data Store model. And then Cloud Bigtable. Then you've got your object store, so cloud storage, and then BigQuery, which we'll get into. So the two items that we're going to talk about here are Cloud SQL and BigQuery. These are just where we're going to focus. There's a lot of different ways, different interactions here. The same conversations we can have with Cloud SQL, we can have with Cloud Spanner as well. So BigQuery, fully managed. So it's actually a serverless. So this is your database. There's no servers. You're not ever going to be deploying servers. You're not ever going to be talking about compute or storage. You're going to be talking about tables and data sets. It's highly scalable. So there are many customers on the GCP platform that are running in the terabytes and petabyte scale tables. And then also Google introduced multi-cloud. So being able to reach into your Amazon database, pull out some of the data in there and massage it in with the data stored in Google Cloud. It's interesting, actually, just touching on the multi-cloud aspect. I've actually seen several customers in the last 6 weeks talk about why they need to be multi-cloud. And previously it was kind of just a marketing thing. It's like, okay, whatever. But I've actually had several use cases about where they have legitimate use cases for storing data in the different clouds. So then having these overarching products that can pull data out is extremely important for them as the use case warrants, right? The way that Google's able to implement this and achieve this kind of scale is by actually decoupling the storage and the compute. So you've got your storage and then the highly available compute cluster that they call Dremel. And they're actually priced differently. So you can talk about, being the analytics is more on the compute side, and then you've got your storage, which is the actual storage of those. The other piece that they changed to create this performance at scale is to think about the entities in a little bit of a different way. You've got your traditional, OLTP transactional database that thinks in rows. So you're inserting, you're updating at a row at a time. So you're updating these columns in this particular row. Retrieve this row, give me this row. But when you're doing analytics, it's more like, give me all of the columns, just these columns, across the entire table. So that you might have some, of course, you're going to have some where clauses and such, but it's mostly going to be about the columns that you're pulling back. So they call it a columnar database. So the other side of that is Cloud SQL. So this is your remote, your relational database. Cloud SQL supports 3 different flavors. Currently, they added a Microsoft SQL Server earlier last year, I think, and fully managed. So there is the concept of a server backend, but a lot of it's abstracted. So you're not actually installing, Microsoft SQL on a database. And I would encourage you, if that is kind of what you guys are doing, then there's other ways that we can do that, and it makes it a lot easier to manage. Where you can kind of think of databases and instances as opposed to thinking about the underlying operating system and the virtual machines supporting that database. This allows for really nice high availability. So across regions, across zones, to be able to make sure that your data is going to be up and available when you need it. Kind of along the same lines, I'm just going to touch on this real quick, but you think about all the different pieces that go into running a database, installing it, and running it. There's all these different pieces. So this is where kind of Google Cloud comes in, where they will take out all of these different pieces and take care of that, and then you've just got your actual, the data and the pieces in the database that you are interacting with. So I hope those kind of make sense. Give it just kind of a whirlwind, touch on these two products, or at least the two concepts. So, in the interest of having, feel free to post questions in the comment. So Google recognizes, that of course there is the transactional databases, and then there's the analytics, workflows. So they released this Datastream earlier this year in May. It is still in preview. They call it preview. It's beta. It used to be called beta, but now it's called preview. So there's a little bit of a limited feature set. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that, and also if you have needs for this right now, what your options are. But again, it might be the theme of this serverless is pervasive throughout Google's experience. So you'll see when we create this that there's no servers. We don't talk about how beefy we need to make a box. We don't talk about how many CPUs it's going to need to be able to process this. And then of course this is custom built for Google to work with Google products. So I think part of this is it'll be interesting to see where they really mature with this, but it is a little Rube Goldberg situation. So you have your source database, which can also be as any SQL environment anywhere. So it could be an on-premise database that you're pulling data into the cloud. So you're ingesting through Datastream. How is CDC? Let me touch on that in a minute. So you're ingesting through Datastream. It will write the AVRO files or JSON. It'll do JSON. It'll do AVR files into cloud storage, which is your object storage, file storage. And then we pull those out using Dataflow to stuff them into BigQuery. And then from there, your sort of reporting tools can then visualize them depending on what you're doing with this. So as I mentioned, because I should have a slide here about what it does support, but roadmap, I did pull out some roadmap information. So looking at PubSub to be able to, instead of just sending to cloud storage, be able to send to PubSub. So that's your publish subscribe messenger queue, MQ. Okay. And then sources also. So currently only supports MySQL. But eventually they will add other sources that you can pull data from. So S3, Amazon's S3, Microsoft SQL Server. Again, these servers can be anywhere, not even Google Cloud. I thought these two were using Google Drive and Google Sheets. Again, this is roadmap, so this might not this might change, subject to change. Asterisk, of course. But questions so far on BigQuery, Cloud SQL, pricing? That's actually a good question. I looked this up for. Yeah. Was that a question? Did somebody type in a question?
I think we had one. I think you said you're going to address in a bit around how's this thing priced? How do you pay for it? What does it cost? Well, I think we'll get to that. Anything on the kind of the foundations what Travis was outlining there? I think very concise 10 minutes of databases. So there's a lot of different options. Let's talk about these. I think that was probably pretty clear just looking at who's in the audience, who I know the backgrounds of. I don't think there was anything earth-shattering for most of you who were there, but if this is a new topic for you, don't be shy.
Yeah, so here's the pricing. This is Datastream itself. The pricing. So it's interesting. I haven't actually analyzed this, so I don't have a good answer for you. So I'll have to read through that. But that's where you would find that information.
So that's in the link that's in the chat there.
Yeah. Okay. So unfortunately, I did run into an issue, so I can't actually show you, data changing and then setting over. So I'm gonna show all the different pieces, and we'll walk through creating a data stream. Document databases present special challenges. Yeah, Yeah, mostly just in the massaging because you're still pulling records, especially if they change. I did forget to mention that that the method for pulling this out is bin logs in MySQL, and so it won't affect performance because those are spit out by the database itself to pull those out. So I'm not sure how it would work in Mongo, but yeah, you're pulling data out, then you're essentially massaging it and dumping it into a standard file format, in this case, AVRO. So a lot of this is, black. It's a little bit of a black box in some ways, as we can see. Here's my SQL environment. Let me walk through. Oh, I lost the tab. Right. So just creating a stream. So new stream. I can pick a region depending on where this is. A lot of this you want it maybe in the same region that your SQL environment is, so you're not pulling data out of a database in Iowa, and pulling it into Belgium unless you have specific needs for that. Of course, this is an asynchronous process, so it's not a big deal. Current source type, so Oracle and MySQL. As I mentioned, Postgres is coming soon. I've got a MySQL database. And then targets, so this is where I talked about, PubSub, the messaging queue. This is your MQ. What is the word? It's like a rabbit MQ message queue. PubSub. Then from there, so this is just my connection information. So here's my public IP and then my connect name. There are options for private network, so it's just easier for a demo environment to go ahead and release the public IP. But of course, we can make sure that both the CloudSQL environment as well as Datastream are communicating over Google's network, internal network. Test, that should work. This is the live demo portion of the talk, and hopefully everything's going to go right. So maybe I don't need to pull everything out of this database. There's a sample database called Menagerie. It's got events and pets, and it has like 5 records, I think, in each table. Nothing too crazy. So different options. Destination. So I'm selecting a pre-selected destination, but really all it is my bucket. So it's just a bucket that I created with my Terraform. Also, if anybody's interested, I do have Terraform that will spin up the CloudSQL environment, the bucket, and the PubSub topics that are related. Yep, and then I can talk about, okay, maybe it needs to have a certain prefixes. So this is the destination. We'll break it up into different sizes. Yeah, so we have JSON and Avro file formats. Continue, review, and we'll go ahead and create. Validation. It's always nice to validate it. Cool, looks good. It's always fun when demos work. So from there, so we did talk about storage files. So we're dumping this into files in cloud storage. So these are so this is my Menagerie. That's the database name, and then the event. So let me back up. So here's my bucket. You can think of a bucket as just a file system. Conceptually, it's like a file system. In the back end, it's a very interesting beast. And then within each quote unquote folder, I've got the sorted files that have been changed, representing the data that was changed in Avro files. So the next piece is to pick up those Avro files. We saw it in the, let's see, let me just go back to this. So we saw it in our little group work diagram. So Datastream is going to dump it into cloud storage. Then from there, we need to take something. So kind of going back to the Svetlanier's question of how do we massage that, right? So we have the Avro file, but then we need to insert it into the database. So there's a little bit of massaging Datastream is doing to get it into Avro, and then a little more massaging to go from Avro into insert actual records into the BigQuery database. And so that's the job of this Dataflow. And unfortunately, that's the problem. That's what broke today. So if anybody knows anything about this error message, that'd be really awesome. Google searching comes up with bupkis. So So anyways, so this is the Dataflow that will just take the files, massage them, and insert them into my BigQuery database. Over here somewhere, which is empty, of course, because it doesn't work. But so I'm working on that. I'll get a ticket opened and we'll get that fixed. Yeah, let's see, Richard, what do you got? Yeah, actually, so good, Richard, good question. So I see this kind of Google entering the fray. It's a pretty crowded space. So I had a list here because like we saw, Datastream's a little bit limited right now in it's just not mature. It's not a mature product. They just released it in May, so we'll give them a little time, I guess. But Stream and Fivetran have been around for a long time, and then Stitch is actually based on an open source tool called Scener. And all three of these do great ETL, and they can also do change data capture. So let's see, adoption from, let's see, your question, Datastream. So your question is more about customers using it. Yeah, so all over the board, right? So anybody that has their transactions, like I said, retail. I think we saw actually there was a list in here. Yeah, so a lot of times you might have some industry specifics that are doing just the transaction processing. So manufacturing, widget was created. Okay, cool. Insert the widget details into the database. Banking transactions for sure. But then there's a lot of business analytics or business intelligence that's happening and saying, okay, well, how many widgets did we make today, or last year, or how many in this quarter? What are the numbers that look like over an aggregate time period, for example? Yeah, and so I think it's one of those, like, any organization that has a transactional database is probably doing some kind of business intelligence, and the change data capture is just kind of formalizing, moving that data into a better place to be able to read it. Because when you have stuff trying to rapidly insert and update into a database, and then you have other stuff that's doing these massive queries to pull back massive amounts of data, it's not going to play well. So offloading some of the more query heavy onto a different database can really help make sure that the two groups are happy with each other. Customers are going to be really upset if some random intern is running a BI report, but they cannot put stuff into their cart, for example. So it was a little bit of whirlwind, but I hope at least I kind of touched on a lot of the high points. Yeah, high points there. If there's any specific questions or we need to dive into anything specific, then let me know.
Ravi, you had a question there. Oh, that's a good one.
A real time. So Datastream not itself. Let's see. So what Datastream can do is dump into cloud storage, and then you have cloud, your Spark environment pull from cloud storage, or really, whatever tool needs to get to wherever your Spark environment is running in. Ravi, are you running Spark today? And I'm curious about your use cases there. If you want to come off mute, and if not, that's fine.
Hey, Ravi, good to see you, and happy to see you. And if you want to come off mute, feel free. Nobody's getting into it, he says.
So it's interesting. I haven't seen a lot of Spark. It seems like there's kind of there's an old camp, I think, of Spark jobs or certain industries that are running a lot of Spark. But I think there's a definite turn more towards like, for example, model training, machine learning model training. Google BigQuery provides model training directly in BigQuery, for example. And then Dataflow, I think, provides a really nice management layer on top of the virtual machines and the underlying parallelization of code.
Yeah. All right. Can you hear me? This is Ravi again.
Yeah.
Ravi. Sorry. No, it's just that I've seen. I think there, like anything, there are times when you need to do real-time analysis on the, when data when changes are made to the database, to the transactional processing database. But there are times when you need sort of the historical, which is when you go to an OLAP, kind of reporting-ish type or analysis type. But in the beginning, I always thought OLAP it went back when RDM, relational databases were the thing, and the only thing somewhat, that it was really a way to massage the data in a way that they could do that analysis. So part of me always thinks, is OLAP really all that much necessary? There's got to be a better solution than that for,
I think, yeah. So you think about some company that has, let's just say a petabyte of data that is like several years worth of transaction history, for example. Probably in your day-to-day transaction logs, transaction database, you probably don't want a whole petabyte of data, right? So at some point, you're going to offload that data. Excuse me. Offload that data, someplace else. I guess that's not really real time in your case, but yeah. So I think especially just because the cloud provides kind of an environment that is not constrained by virtual machines or even hardware. That now you have a lot more data at your fingertips, and you'll have a lot more tools to then analyze that data. Did that answer your question? Or help give insight, maybe?
Yeah, and that yeah, it does. And I think that's what I was looking for in the Datastream thing, is the flexibility to decide, is it going OLAP, is it going real-time analysis, or is this straight in? I think the model you used, where it goes directly into storage, is more of a data lake. Type model, right? You just store it in there, and then someone needs to analyze it, then goes and does that.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually, it's a good point, because actually you could even just empower other teams and say, okay, here's the data in the data lake, go do what you want, and then they can set up their own, kind of processing to pull it out of the data lake and put it into some place that's more useful to them. Massage it.
Okay. But also at some point too, then, would you make the Datastream product more democratically user-based, or no, you'd have to be like a data engineering type and say, no, control that access and granting access and.
Yeah, so a lot of these ETL tools, a lot of the ETL or change data capture tools these days are getting really, really low-hanging fruit. So you can get, these business intelligence people and say, okay, well, yeah, here's my data lake, and I just need to stuff it into a database. So in this case, actually, it'll figure out what the structure of the target database needs to look like, and then match up and create the files, the records in that database. So yeah, I think this is very approachable. Like you saw I didn't really even write any code. And then the Dataflow job, you could write code to run the Dataflow job, but they actually have a template. Yeah, I can show you the command to run the template. Yeah, so there's a command to run the template. You can do this via the API or even the UI, but actually I'll show the UI. So it's actually not as fun in the UI. It's brutal. But yeah, essentially it's all the same fields as you would see in this command that just show, where, what values you have to insert, and very codeless. I don't have really a concept of databases or optimal queries or anything like that.
Okay, thanks.
Stream and Stitch data. I haven't used Fivetran, but Stitch data both are also approachable in the same way. Of course, I'm not sure my screen. Sorry about that.
Yeah, all three of those, or at least two of those, definitely can interact with the majority of the Google Cloud ecosystem if you're trying to figure out which tool is best for your use case. There's another question from Musa, and then I know Ken has got one in there as well. But
yeah, Musa, that's a good question. I actually don't know. It seems to be more of a pull mechanism, except that there's no. Well, there was a piece in the stream. Where'd it go? There is a question. MySQL. There's a couple pieces that you have to do. MySQL. Yeah, so it's going to use this is automate backups and point-in-time recovery, which enables the bin logs. So my guess is that it's actually a pull mechanism, and there doesn't seem to be any kind of settings for how often it pulls. So
Hey,
it kind of
Kyle,
is abstract.
can we please read out the questions, because I don't believe the chat is recorded. So please read out the questions so it's recorded, okay?
Yeah, good question. So the question was, what frequency is the data source pulled for deltas to push to the destination? So, and I think the answer is that it is a pull mechanism, but there does not seem to be any way to determine the frequency.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
So in that case, I guess it would come off of the bin log interval for the point in time recovery would be my assumption. So however granular you could, well, no, my camera's
That was cool.
Yeah, that's actually a feature when you want it. But however granular you want to get on your point in time, or however granular you can in the case of like CloudSQL, right? So that would be the maximum granularity at which you could do it, assuming Datastream is able to pick those up.
Kind of going back to Ravi's question, which is actually interesting because each hop is going to add a little bit of time frame. So by the time you get to BigQuery, it could be 5-minute old data at least, if not more, because there's so many different hops in there. Yeah. Let's see, Ken. So Ken, I apologize. I don't actually know a whole lot about Data Fusion. I have seen it in a similar use case, and I do believe that it does pull from RDBMSs, but I'm not too familiar with that. So if there's anybody here that knows more about it than I do, please pipe up. But I haven't gotten to play with Data Fusion yet.
Any takers in the audience? Anyone experienced with Data Fusion and or data streams, or knows for Data Fusion regarding Ken's question there? And I had guessed, Ken, that you would have this question, so you've confirmed that. If not, that's okay. We will capture it and we'll follow up. I'll follow up with you directly, Ken.
I mean, can I think out loud here? When I think of Data Fusion, I think of basically leveraging data proc in the back end, whereas something like this would leverage data flow. I'm not sure if I'm understanding everything correctly, but that's how I would see it.
Yeah. So here's this is interesting. Stitch. I happen to like these guys, so this actually works out well. But yeah, so they have just had this nice table. I'll throw this in the chat.
Yeah, I would say the data stream, it's the CDC mechanism, right? It doesn't necessarily have the transformation logic component of it, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So that would be the main differentiator. Is it would probably be closer related to PubSub, and the just in the framing of it's just moving data from point A to point B. It's not doing anything with it per se. If you want to do transformation, if you want to manipulate the data, like add timestamps or something like that, or combine it with other data, you'd want to integrate that with something like Dataflow or Data Fusion in order to do the T and the ETL process, right? The transformation piece.
Yeah. Point. Thanks. A lot of times I've seen the pattern where the T in the ETL will be done actually in BigQuery. So a lot of times it's just to get the data from point A to point B. Point B is BigQuery, from point A to point BQ. And then you do the transformation within BigQuery. So you make your massaging, you make your tweaks, and insert a new table in BigQuery, and then pull it out from there.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it really comes down to how do you need to have your transformation. So what are you trying to achieve, right? So if you need to do transformation row by row as it's coming across the wire, right. You might want to do more of an ETL type process. But if you're doing it in aggregate, right, you just get the data, you get in and get out, right? That's your strategy. So you go out and grab the data, you get it over to your staging area, your warehouse area, and then you do your transformations after the fact. So I think your decision in that is really based on what you're trying to do with the data, right? What's the outcome you're trying to achieve, and pick the appropriate tool to fit your use case.
Absolutely. Cool. Okay. Collaborative presentation. Guys, so that's the end of my presentation demo. If you have any questions, let's see, Kyle, what's the best way if they want the Terraform code? What's the best way to kind of get that out?
Yeah, probably if it's so this is the code that you've worked up, Travis? as
Yeah.
in your example. Yeah, so in the follow-up for this, we will post on the GDG event page. There'll be the recording, there will be the slide deck, and then I believe we could also include in there either within the slides or as a separate reference. If the code is embedded within the slide, then that's easy. If it's on a repo somewhere, if you wanted to post a link to where that Terraform might be, whatever is going to be easiest for you, Travis, to get it out there and most useful. So if you wanted to share that, you can just embed it inside of a deck, and we can link that on the event page. Also, if you want to share your contact info, I'm sure we could figure out a way to connect with anybody who's interested as well.
Yeah, cool. I will. Yeah, I'll throw it in the deck, and then we just share the deck for anybody who wants the deck itself.
Ken, you have a roadmap question. We can find out the timeline for it. Everything that was kind of just announced this, what was it, May, Travis?
Yeah, May.
Things came out, and I know it is a very aggressive one, so I will actually follow up with that, find out if anyone else is interested. We'll include that.
Yeah, Kyle has access. I don't have.
Yeah, I'm very happy to share and broker for.
Actually, so let's see. So Ken, is that Ken and Robbie? Do you have Microsoft? Like, would this be useful for your Microsoft databases? Because I'm wondering if you can get that to Kyle, then he can use that as data points for the product managers. Just on that.
I assume you were asking because I know you probably have some, right? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Ken and I are connected, and I know for a fact he does. So yeah, I will look into that for you. And Robbie's, no, that's not for you on SQL Server. Yep. Cool. Well, any other questions or follow-ups on here? Shall we thank Travis, certainly, and then we do have a giveaway to do still, but round of applause to the participants as well. Thank you for a very engaging session. I think we're right on time for everything so far. Any other questions or comments? Was this topic pretty pertinent for those of you? It got you to show up on a Wednesday evening, maybe around dinner time? Some of you, so I appreciate that. Hope it was. Good. All right. Yeah, thumbs up all over the place. Very topical for you, Ken. Yes. Good. Glad we got it in here. Thank you, Travis, for stepping through that, and we'll figure out how to get the demo gods to cooperate. Awesome. So for the giveaway, oh, sorry, Robbie had a comment. You see, been looking at Debugging. I'm not familiar with that one.
I have run into Debugging also. Yeah, very mature product.
Cool. Thanks, Robbie. Now the fun stuff. Let's give some things away. So I have 3 pens and 3 stickers, and I have 1 backpack. So we will do 4 prizes. The way we'll do it is if you just put your first name into the chat, we will quickly copy paste that and put it into some type of a randomized spinning wheel, and we will then spin it, and we'll start with the backpack, I think. So if you're interested, stay on and we'll do the giveaway. If you're not, feel free to stay on as well. Just don't put your name in there. No obligation to win cool things. Or if you got enough of those things in your life, that's fine too. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So this has been the August 18th, 2021 Google Developer Group for San Diego. We had our presenter, Travis Dupuy, talking about Datastream on GCP Cloud. Thank you, Travis.